an intellectual revolution, we do. And that is all about self-determination. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Our first topic, we're going to talk about the Daniel Cameron, the attorney for the attorney general for Kentucky, with the Breonna Taylor case. You know, we know that there had just been released the grand jury information, and there's been a lot of talk about the things that the attorney general did not do, that he did not release information, that he did not give the grand jury as far as when he charged the grand jury relative to this case. I know, Michael, there were some specific things that you want to talk about relative to that prior to talking about those grand jury minutes, or including those grand jury minutes.
Yeah, well, and y'all could definitely handle that. I want to talk about, he appeared on Fox News recently last week, and he did the Tucker Carlson show, and he wanted to respond to his critics. And I'll start by the statements he made, quote, "Because I have a different political philosophy and my role as the Attorney General and Special Prosecutor in the Breonna Taylor investigation led me to facts and the truth and conclusion. Somehow I betrayed my race. It's repugnant. It is so disappointing, but it is par for the course. Enough is enough," unquote. Now, he is under the impression that somehow we perceive him as betraying the race because he spoke facts and truth. If you remember, he kept on using the word facts and truth, but now we're finding out that that was not true. I said that several weeks ago. I said that there was not an option for the grand jury to look at lesser charges than murder, as in involuntary manslaughter, which is part of Kentucky law. Well, now we found out that it wasn't introduced because a juror not only had a problem with that, but made it a point to make a motion that the deliberations be made public after the trial, because some of them realized that he was leading them away from indicting the officers who shot Breonna Taylor. So when the juror made those motions, we're talking about a situation where that's a strict secret situation where you cannot reveal the minutes, the statements, and things that are made in that grand jury unless there's a prosecution. That's the only way it becomes public, is if there's a prosecution. Now, the evidence that's in the grand jury can be used as part of the prosecution. Consequently, he never introduced at all and made the two officers exempt from being prosecuted, which means that when he said they were all in agreement that the officers were legally justified, he was lying. They were not legally justified to kill Breonna Taylor because her boyfriend shot around, because that wasn't introduced. I said several weeks ago that he treated Breonna Taylor as collateral damage. What do I mean by that? I mean that he, because of a round was fired by the boyfriend, a warning shot, he felt everything goes. So now they're in a position where they could do anything under the sun, and he will not introduce that as an option to review the conduct and the behavior of those officers. And he cannot do that. He is supposed to be the finder of facts. He is supposed to reveal those things to the grand jury. He did not do that. He failed in his responsibilities, and he turns around and tries to say that we look at him as a race traitor because he was acting out of his job as a special prosecutor. No, if he was a special prosecutor and was doing his job correctly, then there would have been an indictment on his part. We know full well what Sal Watler said many, many years ago about a ham sandwich can be indicted. Consequently, he lied and lied and lied and lied again after lie to make those two officers exempt. Consequently, Breonna Taylor was just collateral damage. So the Hankinson, the third detective, was exonerated, was indicted on the wanton endangerment because people in the adjourning apartment, when the round went through the sliding door in the window, went into their apartment. That's why he was charged, but the two officers was exempt from prosecution from the outset.
It was chief of that, Julian, and the reason why there's so much outrage is because no one was indicted as a result of our sister being killed in her house. The chief problem with the grand jury, the presentation that the Attorney General made to the grand jury was that when he did his press conference, and we spoke about this last week as well, is he made it appear as if the grand jury and him agreed with his decision not to indict the police officers, that both of them concluded that the officers acted due to the circumstances appropriately. There should be no criminal charges. He inferred and implied and subliminally suggested that the grand jury also agreed that the officers should not be indicted. And that's not true, because as Michael just stated, and Julian, as you stated as well, is that the grand jury make a decision based on the presentation by the prosecutor. In this case, the Attorney General. The Attorney General gave them no information which would lead them to indict the police officers. So the ball wasn't in their court, it was on his court. And we have to understand there are crimes of commission, things that you do, and there's crimes of omission, things that you should do, but you don't do. In this case, the Attorney General, we believe that it was intentionally didn't make a presentation to the grand jury to indict these police officers because he felt they were innocent, because he believed they were innocent. So that's why he didn't make a presentation to the grand jury. And his appearance on Fox News, how many of our people get the opportunity to appear on that station? So it's not, when he asks us if there's some objection to our community to his position, all you have to do is look at his history, look at his lifestyle, look at his associates. You can really, for the most, determine that he made his escape from our community, not us, shunning him. But we understand that all skin folks and kin folks, and this is one individual. And then my last point is I made on so many programs, Julian, is regarding his decision not to bring up the issue of the warrant, which is complex, and we believe that should have been brought up. And we're going to attach a story later on in the program to show how it could have been. But Michael and you spoke well. This district attorney is the sole reason why these officers were indicted, not the grand jury.
Now, one of the problems that I have with this particular case, when I talk about not just the case, but how he released the grand jury minutes and testimony and audio to the public, one thing that he did not release was his charge to the jury. So he said that, listen, that is not evidence, so it's not needed to be released, which is a farce. It's part of the total package when we talk about the presentation to the grand jury. What's very important is how he charged the grand jury, the information that he gives to the grand jury, where they can make a determination on what charges should be prosecuted or submitted for trial, and what laws they have to review to make that determination. Now, because he did not release that information, we can't know for sure what the grand jury had presented to them, other than the information that that jurist who came out and requested that the grand jury minutes be released. So I believe that he intentionally withheld that information because, especially when he said, or it's reported that it was said, that the two officers who were involved in the shooting of Breonna Taylor were not culpable, should not be charged in that particular case. Now that is totally, that totally removes the grand jury from making a decision or determination based on the facts that should have and could have been presented to them. So I think that the entire minutes of the grand jury and recordings of the grand jury should be released, including his charging of the grand jury, because it's not like the tape was turned off while he spoke and then turned back on when the evidence was being presented. It's a total package, so the total package should have been presented to the community for review.
Well, what he did is inexcusable. First of all, the audio that you're referring to earlier, Julian, was cherry picked. He took certain segments of it and made those available. He cherry picked a few things that would not expose himself. So certainly you could understand he's not going to do anything that's going to expose his dastardly deeds. Now, after that, you have to consider he threw himself at the mercy of Fox News, appearing on Tucker Carlson's show to say that he's being vilified because of a certain philosophy that he has. Well, let's look at that philosophy. He's a Republican. Obviously, he spoke at the Republican convention. He allegedly is on Donald Trump's long list of potential Supreme Court nominees. He's married to a white woman, and that's not to be ignored. He has a certain lifestyle. So when he says it's his political position, well, that might be so in a sense, but he has been a gatekeeper for white people. He came out in his press conference and attacked those, any outside thinkers that wanted to say anything other than what the prevailing thinking in Kentucky is. And that's white supremacy. Now, he is not even aware of the fact that if he took off that nice, beautiful suit of his and put on some sweatpants and a sweatshirt and put a baseball cap on backwards and went jogging somewhere or went somewhere, he might be somebody's dinner. Some white folks that's hunting, he might be their dinner, and he's protecting them like the gatekeeper that he is. See, when you sleep white, you think white, and he think he's accepted by them, and he says, oh, it's par for the course, enough is enough. He's acting like Clarence Thomas, when Clarence Thomas said he was the victim of all out hate campaign because of his positions. And that's how he got nominated to the Supreme Court. Robert Abrams did the same exact thing that Cameron did. Robert Abrams said that the grand jury and the Tawana Brawley trial agreed with him that it was a hoax and said that the grand jury said it was a hoax. The grand jury came out later and said they never said it was a hoax, the rape and abduction of Tawana Brawley. He said it was a hoax. He wrote a grand jury report. He did not share that with them or said, let's get all your thoughts on this before I present this. He wrote it and said it was a hoax. And this is the same thing that this special prosecutor is doing. The same exact thing, trying to take their beliefs and impose them. And instead of Robert Abrams going after the people that Tawana Brawley said raped and abducted her, he went after Tawana Brawley and her family, the mother, the aunt, and Tawana Brawley herself. So this is nothing but the same thing repeating itself. What happened in '87 and now is going on in 2020, one by white supremacist Robert Abrams, now by a black gatekeeper, Daniel Cameron.
Right. Well, let me just say this real quick, and I know Noel, you have something to say, and I also want to comment a little bit more on this particular case. We're on YouTube Live, so we have people that are watching the show right now as it's going on. We like to thank those people who are part of our YouTube community watching us live. As Noel always says, tell a foe, tell a friend. You can watch us on YouTube Live when we come on live, and you'll have an opportunity to watch us in a recording fashion later on. Noel, I know you wanted to comment on this case. I have some things I wanted to say as well. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, my final point is, Julian and Michael as well, you all raised two important points that is very important for our viewing audience to understand. You know, the prosecutor has a very important role, and it's their direction, it's their presentation to the jury as it relates to charges that the jury votes on. I mean, he can say a whole lot of things occurred. He can say the whole lot of facts. He can say a whole lot of ballistics, because he can quote a whole lot of reports. But when he charges the jury on the criminal charges that they have to think about and to deliberate about, you know, whether or not they want to give a true bill or a false bill, his presentation is very important. And Julian, when you said that that wasn't part of what he made public, you know, we understand why, because the jury based, you know, their decisions on what was presented before them. And that's the strategic point that I hope our viewing audience can get. When we say that the grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, we know for a fact that over 98% of the people who go into the grand jury get indicted, civilians. We also know that there's a very low percentage of indictments when it comes to police officers, especially in these controversial shootings. Now, how can 99.9% of civilians get indicted in the grand jury when the prosecutor makes a presentation or conviction, but yet such a low number, 10, 15%, if that high, of these controversial incidents involving police officers, are the district attorneys successful in getting an indictment? We know that something is wrong. We know that there's something inappropriate going on, and it's because the district attorney determines what happens, or the prosecutor or the state attorney general, as in this case, determines for the most part what happens in the grand jury. You know, not necessarily the jury, because most of the time it's a biased presentation, because only the prosecutor puts forward all the facts, and that's the only thing they have an opportunity to make a decision on. Once in a while, a defendant may testify. If he comes with something overwhelming, which rarely happens, they may deviate. But overwhelming majority of the time, prosecutor get an indictment when it's a civilian. But we know this far too often when it's a police officer. You know, those statistics go in a totally opposite direction.
Now, when I had an opportunity to read some of the information that was printed relative to the grand jury presentation, I read one portion where one of the jurors had questioned the prosecutor about Detective Cosgrove. As Detective Cosgrove explained, he said when he was in the middle of the shooting, he said all he saw was black and white. It was like when a television movie goes awry and all you see is the black and white on the screen. He said that's all he saw. He said that he was kind of shocked and taken back, like he just didn't really know what was going on. He said if you would have asked him what happened, he would have said he doesn't know what happened. One of the jurors had asked specifically, does Detective Hargrove have a history of panic attacks? She was concerned about it. So now he wasn't the one that was indicted, but the grand jury had questions about his role and the sergeant's role, but it appears, and only because all of the information hasn't been released, that I can't make an assessment, or at least I haven't seen it, that the prosecutor directed them and steered them away from those two officers. And even based on his own statement, that their role in the killing and the murder of Breonna Taylor was justified, did not allow the grand jury to have a clear, a true assessment of what they thought relative to this case, who should have been indicted or who shouldn't have been indicted. So it seems as if it was skewed by the prosecutor to direct this case away from those two particular officers without giving the grand jury an opportunity to have their own assessment based on the evidence that was presented and should have been presented to them.
And just want to say for the record, that Daniel Cameron, congratulations on your recent marriage. You married another white woman. You had one white wife 4 years ago. Now you're working on your second one. I commend you. You like white women, obviously, white flesh. You want to be around. Just want to say for the record, one black man to another, brother, you are weak-kneed, jelly spine, no good Uncle Tom. You are nothing but a gatekeeper for white people, but be content with your law degree and that you're undergirding white supremacy. Congratulations.
All right. We again, we have the show is live right now. You can watch it live on YouTube. And Conscious One says hello to the Community Cop family, and we give greetings back to you. We appreciate you watching our show. And as Noel says, tell a foe, tell a friend. You know, we want as many people watching as we possibly can, so our people can get our perspective and give us their perspective on the issues that are affecting our community. I have another topic.
I knew I wasn't gonna get no amens on that, but go ahead.
Oh, no, brother. Listen, brother. You know, we want you to tell them what you feel, brother. Tell them exactly how you feel, brother.
Amen will help, but go ahead.
Brother, you got an amen, brother. We got a lot of stories to go with, brother. We know you are passionate about it, brother, and we appreciate it. Noel, two black police officers were involved in a search warrant that was similar in portion to what happened to the Breonna Taylor case, but these two black officers and possibly 4 more officers may have been the 2 black officers were indicted on this particular case. Can you give us some information on this case, Noel?
Yes, sir. For those who watch the program for the last few weeks, you know that we've been very persistent about the issue of the search warrant. In the Breonna Taylor case, there's a lot of information which indicates that the police officer lied in terms of getting that search warrant. He lied to the judge. He claimed that an inspector from the post office informed him that drugs were delivered to this apartment previously. The inspector from the post office said, I never told the officers that. As a matter of fact, I told him that we have never did that. So the basis of the search warrant is very important. And this is why Uncle Tom, weak knee, what else, Mike?
Jelly spine.
Jelly spine, Attorney General, intentionally stated, if you watch his press conference, that he didn't look at the issue of the press conference because he wanted to avoid
search warrant. You mean
a search warrant, no-knock search warrant. He wanted to avoid getting his officers in trouble, as the story that we're going to talk about right now. There's 2 black Houston police officers. One officer's name is Gerard Gaines. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder, and his partner, Brian Stephen, who's been charged with tampering with government records because they effected a search warrant, a no-knock search warrant at the home of a white couple. The white couple ultimately was killed during the search warrant. They fired on the police officers. A number of officers were injured. But they found out that, or they're accusing Officer Joe Gaines, once again, a black police officer, that he lied on his application for the search warrant by stating that an informant purchased drugs at this location when he actually purchased the drugs. I don't know why he would do something like that or say something like that, but it was determined that he lied on his application to the judge for the search warrant. And under Texas law, during commission of a felony, which is the perjury charge that he made to the judge when he lied to get the no-knock warrant and caused the death of another, is first-degree murder. So because he lied on his application for the search warrant, because he perjured himself, and when they effected this search warrant, and 2 white people, 2 white individuals, one name was Regina Nichols, and the white male was Dennis Tottle, and they found drugs in the house, by the way. They found cocaine and marijuana in the house. But because this black officer is accused of lying on his application, lying when he got the no-knock warrant, and 2 people died as a result of them effecting this warrant, he's being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Now, when you compare that what happened to Breonna Taylor, and we talk about and we emphasize how the officer lied on the search warrant, you see why this Attorney General intentionally said we didn't look at the search warrant. We're not going to get into that, and just jumped into what happened as it relates to the shooting. Now, when you investigate an incident, as Julian and Michael both know, with our law enforcement background, you start at the beginning. Beginning is not when they were at her door affecting a no-knock warrant. The beginning was when they applied for the warrant, and this Attorney General and Breonna Taylor's killing intentionally avoided that because he did not want to deal with this issue. But here you see these two Black officers who's facing their lives now. You know, 2 counts of murder. This officer is facing because he lied on his application for the no-knock warrant. You know, it's just timely that this has come up at the same time. But when you compare the two, just like we compared the Black officer who shot the white woman when she approached his car, he's doing 12 years in jail. Our family got a lot of money. And, you know, when you compare such similar cases, when one is Black, one is white, police officers Black, the victims are white, and Breonna Taylor, officers are white, the victim is Black. You see how cases are handled and mishandled. And I think this particular case is an example, an acceptable example to see how justice works in America.
Now, I would love to see a checklist. If you had a checklist side by side of these particular cases, when you said, okay, and start from the beginning, as you stated, Noel, we talk about how the application of the search warrant was received and presented to the judge. And then you check off whether it was good or bad. Was there any evidence of drugs in the location? Check off if it was good or bad. Did the victims who were shot by the police, were they armed? Did they fire? I mean, it has to go side by side and see how the outcome on each case is totally different. We have to realize that there is duplicity when we talk about law enforcement and this judicial system when it comes to our community and the white community. And unfortunately, we don't have the strong support from our elected officials, from the judicial system, and to ensure that there's fairness and equity when we talk about these cases. It doesn't take much to juxtapose these cases and determine where the imbalance is and how it exists, but it's not being done by the people who are put in position to ensure that there's fairness and equity throughout this entire justice system.
Well, just wanted to say, Noel, you're absolutely right with respect to starting from the beginning with respect to warrants, whether it's a search, whether it's arrest warrant, whatever, no-knock warrant, whatever it might be, you start from the beginning. And we found out at Daniel Cameron's press conference that they did not exercise a no-knock warrant. Yet it's inconsistent in the fact that they knocked down the door. Yet he's saying there was not a no-knock warrant execution. So I think Julian is right when he says, put the two and weigh them. Then when you look at the fact that Cameron did not go after those two officers, but in the other case, the officers was immediately indicted. So if they were arrested right away and they're in a position to now be indicted, you're gonna say, what happened? Well, they thought they was on the team, but they wasn't on the team. Now, the case Noel mentioned, and I'm glad he mentioned it, in Minnesota, that was the first first cop ever convicted of murder, first. And that happened to be a Black cop in Minnesota, born in Somalia. So he's African-American, but he's continental African. That's not a coincidence. He tried to say the same thing, like those brothers are trying to say, you know, and they get caught in the lie. He said he was protecting his partner. His partner was white. It didn't fly. They gave his name to the press right away. And the white woman's family, in this particular case, was awarded $20 million. That's right, $20 million. They put in for 50, they immediately settled after the conviction, not before. You know, maybe Crump needs to learn something. After the conviction, the white woman's family was awarded $20 million. So that's just Just keep note of that. When a black cop thinks he's on the team and he think he can say the same things that his white counterpart says and get away with it, it doesn't fly with the district attorney's office because they are not compelled to go along with your lies. They can indict. They can indict here in New York. They can indict in Minnesota. They can indict in Texas. All these places where these cases are going on. It's just up to the district attorney. And in this particular case with Cameron, he's nothing but a gatekeeper.
And it's interesting that you brought up what happened with the officer in Minnesota, the black one who's now in jail. I think he got sentenced to 12 years.
12 years.
12 years. In this case that I'm talking about in Houston, where the two white individuals, Tyler Dennis and Regina Nichols, they were unfortunately killed. They were in their own house. But I couldn't find anything about their criminal background or if they had a criminal background. There's no commentary saying that whether they did or did not, but they did say that they found drugs in their house. But normally, especially in the Breonna Taylor case, you hear a lot of information about her alleged boyfriend, his criminal connection, and that's how she always went out with these kind of individuals. But in this particular case, where the black police officers have been indicted for murder and killing two white individuals in a house where there was drugs, contract set with Breonna Taylor's house where there were no drugs, no contraband whatsoever, but you don't hear any mention about any criminal background of these two individuals. And it just shows hypocrisy, Julian, when you said that our politicians, or what's more, politicians are legislatures. Politicians write laws. And their responsibility is not only to write laws, but to make sure that laws are enforced. You just don't write a law and move on. When you look at this criminal system of injustice in this country, there's a duplicity, as you stated, Julian, the way the laws are implemented against black people and against white people. But our politicians, and many of you love them, many of you are encouraging us to go out and vote Democrat in this upcoming election, and saying that it's our salvation, that, if we don't do anything else, we need to vote Democrat. That, it's a chagrin to our ancestors that we don't vote Democrat. Democrats and Republicans have failed us. Democrats and Republicans see the duplicity in this criminal system of injustice and do nothing or say nothing.
That's
both
right.
White Democrats and Black Democrats. So I'm not convinced. Y'all still have to convince me that it's a affront to our ancestors if I don't support Democratic parties who promise us the world and give us nothing.
Well, I think the affront is these elected officials who are continuously failing our community. I think that they are the problem. But unfortunately, we have to revisit, as I always say, I always talk about revolutions, and I'm not talking about revolutions with guns. I'm talking about a political, intellectual revolution. These people are failing us. They are doing absolutely nothing for our community, but they are consistently re-voted into position and continuously fail us. So we have to revolt. We have to think about how we deal with these people, and we have to remove them from their position. They're using our tax dollars, and they are just using us as fodder. They are doing absolutely nothing for our community, so we have to respond differently. All right, Michael, I know we wanted to talk about the police officer that killed Jonathan Price in Texas.
Yeah, let me just say this real quickly because I know we short on time. Just want to say that Wolf City, Texas, police officer Sean Lucas, he shot and killed Jonathan Price. Now the thing was, Jonathan Price was intervening in a shopping area where a man was being abusive to a woman. He intervened and stopped it. After the situation was calmed down, the police arrived on the scene. When the police arrived on the scene, after it was calm, they approached Price, and Price walked away from the police officer. The police officer in turn tased him, and as the electricity shot all through his body, he was being all contorted and going through convulsions from the electricity. The police officer subsequently pulled out his duty weapon and shot and killed him. Now, his excuse was that he did some non-lethal non-lethal, how do you call it? Non-threatening resistance. He didn't resist at all. He walked away. So he was tased. Subsequently, after that, he was shot. And then the chief even looked at the video. It hasn't been given to the public yet, but even the chief looked at it and said that he wasn't happy with what he saw. So the police officer has been administratively suspended, but he hasn't been fired, and that happened on the 3rd. So he hasn't been fired yet. He just been suspended. But the witnesses said the brother just stopped the fight. He wasn't doing nothing. The situation was calm and under control. And when he tried to walk away from the police officer, he was tased and then shot. And right now it's under investigation by the Texas Rangers. But just remember, just in case you think that that's an independent investigation, the Texas Rangers did the investigation on both of them, John, that was shot by Amber Geiger, and they also did the investigation on a Tatiana Jefferson, who was shot by Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean while she was playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew. So let's take with a grain of salt anything that the Texas Rangers come up with.
Now, Michael, let me ask you a question. Now, the Texas Rangers have placed him under arrest at this time, correct?
He's just been suspended. He has not been placed under arrest.
Well, I have a report, and I was looking at it as well. They said that he's been arrested and he's on a $1 million bail. They offered a $1 million bail. So he has been arrested. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to be convicted, prosecuted. That doesn't mean any of that. All that means is that he's been arrested. So we definitely have to continue watching this case and find out what the results are.
So he might have been arrested today.
I think he was arrested yesterday, I believe.
Okay.
But okay, Noel, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, right. This is a tragedy case, and I just want to clean up a little language as it relates to Jonathan Price. And it's ironic that if you know anything about his history, he was an advocate for the police. You know, a lot of times with the Black Lives Matter marches and the protests, not saying that he was against them, but he was against some of the anti-police language. If you look at some of his videos on YouTube, he was an advocate for the police. And I even believe he was pro Donald Trump. Now, I wouldn't mention one fact, but I'm not going to mention the fact that he had a white girlfriend and he said that he has a proclivity towards white women. I'm not going to mention that.
Well, I'm mentioning it
because that has nothing to do with him being shot. But what I want to do is to show the viewing audience that he didn't necessarily walk away from the police. He knew that he didn't do anything wrong. So when the police came, he had no idea they was talking to him because he had broken up a fight. He didn't commit any crime. He was not engaged in any criminality. So in his head, the police, if the police are here, they're not here for me. So the officer was presumptuous, as most white police officers are. When they see black skin and they're responding to a report of a crime, they automatically attach any person with a black skin to a criminal action. So this individual, as all the witnesses stated, as you stated, all the witnesses said that he wasn't involved in no criminality. He had just done something good because that was his history. He was a good guy. But which was, like I said, which is highly ironic, is that this guy was pro-police officer. In his YouTube videos, he always was pro-police. We have to support the police. And look what happens to him at the hands of the individuals that he was so vehement and supporting. And all of us should support good police officers. We have no problem with that. But the same group that he was so vehement and posting himself on video in support of are the ones that one individual wound up killing him. But as Julian said, we have to see the arrest is not a prosecution. Arrest is not an indictment. Arrest is not a prosecution. Arrest is not a fair sentencing. And it's not until we have all of that should we say that this individual received justice?
Yeah. I'm looking at some of the comments by some of our viewers, and I'll pose this to you, Noel, even though I know the answer. A viewer asked why Black cop unions aren't powerful, and I understand that the unions are inclusive, Black and white, but I'll let you answer the question.
Right. Well, there's no Black unions.
Right.
Black may be members of a police union, but there's no Black police union that I know of. Unions are dominated by white boys, by white police officers. Many of them are racist. The only reason why I say that, because, you look at the PBA, which is the Police Benevolent Association, and the SBA, Sergeants Benevolent Association. Whenever African Americans have successfully sued the New York City Police Department because of their discriminatory policies, the unions have never supported the Black officers in any of the lawsuits. Now, these are their members, but they ignore them. They don't pay attention to them. So there's no such thing as a Black police union that I know of.
Right. And, I've spoken to members of the PBA who feel that Blacks need to have their own representation separate and apart from the PBA, because they don't get the same support from the PBA when they have issues with the department. They don't get the same support from the attorneys from the PBA. So there is a definite separation in how the PBA deals with Black officers and how they treat white officers.
I'm sorry, let me interject one more thing, Julian. Of course, the unions they function in the democratic system, meaning that they have elections. And in New York City, Black police officers have always only average about 12 to 15% of the New York City Police Department. So we've always been a minority. We're a majority in the city. And that's why one of the things that people talk about police reform, making certain that there's more Black police officers on this police department is not mentioned as a priority. Everything else don't mean nothing.
Mike?
Yeah, and just want to say that in our comment section a couple of weeks ago, one person commented that they love the show and it's extremely informative. However, why did we show a picture of a Black family, all those women? It was a women's day out, and all of those women were face down on the pavement with police guns trained on them. Well, we showed it because it happened. We didn't make it up. We showed something that actually happened. Little girls crying for their mother, crying for their other family members. That's why we showed it. So yeah, the show was informative, but also we're gonna keep it real, give you it raw and unfettered. So that's what we did. The reason we showed that is because it happened. Don't get mad at us. Be mad at the police officers that had guns on little girls.
Right, absolutely. Noel, we had another story we wanted to talk about. A woman in Aurora was hogtied in Aurora, Texas, by the police when she was being arrested.
Yes, this is also making its way throughout YouTube and throughout the video. A police officer, white police officer, Levi Afeen, responded to a situation where a young lady was engaged in a fight. He decided to arrest her, and he claimed that she tried to leave the vehicle, so he hogtied her. He tied her hands to her ankles and threw her in the back of his patrol car. On his way to the precinct to arraign her, to process her arrest, she had slid from the chair because he threw her in the chair face down. On his way to the precinct, she had slid off the chair onto the ground and onto her neck. Now, if you look at the video, which is very horrific, and I can't even really watch it because the sister is begging the police officer, telling him, I can't breathe, or I feel like I'm going to break my neck. Can you please sit me up? This white police officers, as many of these white supremacist, racist police officers are, so callous that he ignored her pleas. And she had got so desperate where she called him master. She reduced herself to a surgeon, trying to appeal for some sympathy and some assistance because she really thought she was going to die at that point. Like I said, you can look at the video on YouTube. And I think it's outrageous. This officer was only fired. This is the same police chief, Vanessa Wilson, that we talked to when you talk about the sister, the forces that was laid on the floor. This is her police department. It seems to be, this is the Aurora Police Department, right? it seems to be a contagious with a police department, how callous these racist police officers are. She fired him, and she said that if this individual would have died, that she would have arrested him. So now you're telling me that we have to die in order to have an arrest? This officer's actions amounted to torment, amounted to police brutality and abuse, and he should have been arrested. You know, the video is plain, her pleas is plain. A position that she was placed in his vehicle, and when she slid onto the ground, onto her head and her neck, is plain. And there's no reason in the world why this officer was not arrested. And here goes why these things continuously happen. This is why we have so many police stories outrageous, because these officers are not sufficiently punished when they engage in this kind of demented behavior. You know, if there's no penalty, that's the deterrent. That's what's going to cause police officers to change. They're racist, they're white supremacists, they're callous, they're sociopath. You can't stop that. The only way you're going to prevent it from happening is punishing them. And if these officers continue not to be punished and only fired so they can go to a police department, you know, in the next county or town, that's not a deterrent. So her actions, although she was verbally critical of this police officer's actions, he called them outrageous and decided to fire him. He should have been fired. It's not sufficient enough for her to say if this woman would have died, he would have been arrested. We shouldn't have to wait to a death before we can say a police officer's actions were criminal and then make him then arrest him.
Right. All right. Noah, we had one more story that I wanted to get to. It was involving a car accident where an officer bragged about beating a motorist and he ended up dying. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it quickly, or we can wait until next week.
I'll talk about it real quickly. This happened in Baton Rouge. Ronald Green, a male black, was involved in a car accident. His family was told that he died as a result of the accident, that he succumbed to his injuries. This happened 17 months ago. Now the family found out because somebody leaked the tape of this white police officer, Chris Hollingsworth, bragging about beating the F out of this motorist, out of this brother. He said, I beat the living F out of him, and he even admitted to choking him. So now we know, the family knows that he didn't die as a result of his injuries of the vehicle, that there was an assault by this police officer. And so we'll find out what happens if this officer is arrested. He's now been put on house duty, but I think it's preposterous. He was caught bragging. The only way the family found out about it is somebody leaked the video of it.
Right. And we'll try to keep our family abreast of this. Listen, everybody, we were live. We thank you guys for watching. We want you to keep watching. In the future, we'll try to get to more of our some more of your comments. We appreciate you writing in and talking about some of the topics we discussed and some of your own topics. So we appreciate it. We're running out of time. Final comments, Michael Graves.
Yeah, just want to again salute the Nation of Islam, the mighty FOI, Fruit of Islam. For again, this is your leaders, your leader, your teacher, your guide, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is his birthday, 10/7, and certainly we wish you nothing but good tidings, and we wish you nothing but another 90 years of strength and success. You've been therapeutic for me and so many others that look to you for strength and guidance. So again, black man, black woman, protect the black child. In the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, accept your own and be yourself.
Okay, Lenny Lou, Little Mo, Kitty Cat, I love you all. Len, Cat, Little Mo, I love you. Kitty Cat family, I love you. Peace.
Again, Harper family, Sharon Darlene. Again, I love you guys. I appreciate you, your assistance in the comments you give relative to the show. We appreciate all you guys watching. Leader family as well. Graves family, Community Cop family, keep watching. We got to thank Veronica Kitt. We got to thank Daryl, Big D. You're doing a phenomenal job. Thanks a lot. We got to thank Sheila Berry. We got to thank Nat Woods and everybody that contributes to the airing of Community Cop, especially our Community Cop family and our YouTube family now. We appreciate you. Noah, one time.
Peace.
We'll see you next week.